Hello and welcome to the channel. Today I'm going to be working on what I hope is the most helpful video I have here on my channel, and that is going to be a very simple tutorial of how to use MuseScore. No matter what your purpose is, whether you're just starting out in composition or whether you're a professional, maybe moving over from something like Finale, I hope that you find something helpful in this video. I'll try to pack everything in best I can. I made one other video like this before and I felt like it wasn't thorough enough, and I felt like I've learned a lot since then. So I wanted to update and give really a MuseScore masterclass with everything I've learned up to this point with the latest version of MuseScore. So with all that being said, let's jump right in. So first you're going to need to download MuseScore if you haven't already, completely free. I'll put the link in the description. And when you open MuseScore, you're going to be greeted with this page. And so if you have previous scores, you're going to see them here. But we're going to click on New Score, and I'm going to show you how even before your scores open, you could do a few extra things on this page that I think is going to make it look even better when you initially open your score. So let's click on this and see what happens. We get a pop-up window, and now I want to draw your attention to, if you are not too familiar with the instruments you want to start out with, you're fine to start with a template over here. They have a bunch of wonderful options, starting with choir. They have all different choral options. Down at the bottom, they have orchestral, from small orchestras all the way up to large symphony orchestras. And you see here they have all the different parts laid out. So if that's the decision that you end up going with, feel free to, but we're going to click on this Choose Instruments button over here. And we're going to pick out just pretty basic orchestral instruments, and not too many at that, because I'm just trying to show you how this works. So you'll double click on the instruments you want to include. I'll start up here with woodwinds. We have flute, oboe, let's do a clarinet, and a bassoon. I know I could add more, but we'll stick with that. Go to brass, we're going to add a horn, we're going to add a trumpet in B flat, we're going to add a trombone and a tuba. We're going to go to pitched percussion, and I want a timpani. I'm going to go to percussion unpitched, and let's see, I want a snare drum and I want a suspended cymbal. I'm going to be okay without percussion, vocals, or keyboard here. I'm going to go down to bowed strings, and I'm going to do violin, viola, cello, and bass. Now I know it says violins section, violas section. You can change all of the sound effects in the mixer, and it really doesn't change too much clicking on section versus the singular one. So I just click on the singular one. Not too big of a deal there. So once you have all the instruments selected, they're going to pop up on this right side of the screen under your score. And you see I have the order set to an orchestral order right now, but you can get recommendations basically for what instrument order you're going to have. So if you wanted to move something, let's say you wanted your suspended cymbal above your snare drum, I would click on suspended cymbal, and then I'd click this up arrow, move selected instrument up. And so now when I open that score, they'll be adjusted as they should be. So once you've selected this and put everything where it needs to be, don't click on done yet, but click on next, because it's going to open a new window for you. And this is that new window. It says additional score information. Now I'm going to put in some placeholders here just so you see the process. Instead of C major, let's go to one of my favorites, E flat major. Comment if you like E flat major. I don't know why. I guess as a piano players like it a lot. Something like that. So time signature, let's change it to 3/4 just to be a little different. Our tempo, click on that. Now here's something. Here's one of my tips for you. Click show tempo marking on my score. Now this just means, of course you want the tempo marking at the start of your score, right? You want people to, if they have their metronome nearby, they can figure out exactly how fast you want it. Unless you're using text to describe how fast you want it and you're going for more of that thing. But here I'm going to change from 120 to 90, just slow it down a little bit. And then next to that is going to be measures. And now here's one of the weird things. It always shows you 32 measures. So it will start you with 32 measures and no pickup. If you want a pickup, it's pretty simple to add. You just click right here, and I think we'll include one for the sake of this video. So 1/4, that means it will be 1/4 note to start this piece off. So before the first measure begins, I will have a pickup of 1/4 note. If I needed it to be 2/4 notes, I'd click here, make it 2, 4. If I wanted to make it an 1/8 note, I just click 1/8. So let's do it as 1/4, and that will give us our 1/4 note pickup. Now here's one of the biggest things I come to this screen for, is because it starts you out with 32 measures. And now there's nothing wrong with that at all. That's perfectly fine. But that means when I open my score, it's going to have a bunch of pages. It might have the measures split across multiple pages. And it just, I guess it's overwhelming when you first open your score and you don't even have a note down yet, but you have this huge placeholder. So I like to, for my own personal preference, I change it to 5 measures. 5 is perfectly fine. It fills up the first page of my score and it gives me some open space to work with, but I'm not sitting there like, I don't have 32 measures written yet. So just start with just a few measures, add to that, and we could always add more measures later. So once you're done with that, just click off of it. So I have 5 measures and a pickup of 1/4. Score title, let's call this MuseScore Video. What a great name for a song. Here we have my name, Dylan May. And you can even put, if you want something like this, you can put what year you were born, so you see what a child I am. And so here under subtitle, let's just leave it called subtitle as a placeholder. Now for lyricist, this is going to appear on the opposite side of the page from where the composer is. So what I like to put under lyricist, it doesn't have to be the lyricist, of course. I just use it as a placeholder, usually for the date that I've started working on the piece. So if I put the piece aside and work on it again in a few months, I'm not going to go, oh, when did I start this? Is this 3 years old? Is this a year old? What is this? So that's always a suggestion I have. Now for copyright, this will of course appear at the bottom of the page. You're free to put anything you want here. If you want to put the copyright symbol on your music, you could very simply go find it on Google and copy and paste the symbol right into here. But I'm going to just put the year, and I'm going to put my name. Now after that, you're finished with your opening screens. You're about to open the final score, so let's click done and see what it looks like. It has placed everything just as we selected, and we even have this 1/4 note pickup measure as I told you. You see here we have the tempo marking. And so, if you're like me, you might immediately open this score and want to start tinkering with everything and put things in the right spot. You might not like, for example, right here, the suspended symbol. You see how that stretches across the page a bit and pushes the whole score over? Let's say I wanted to take that and make it where they're in 2 rows instead of side by side in 1 line. So I'm going to click on this measure for the suspended symbol, and I'm going to right-click it. And now you're going to see Staff Part Properties. Click on him. And now here we go. This is going to be a very helpful menu for your instrument names and your short instrument names as well that appear on the following pages. So right here we have suspended symbol, and instead of it being in 1 line, I'm going to click here, backspace, and hit enter. So now he's bumped down 1 line. And now when I hit apply, you see the whole score bumped over just a little bit. And I kind of like to do this with a lot of the instruments. For example, trumpet in B flat. Well, I get your point, of course. It is a trumpet in B flat, and there's nothing wrong with how they've written that there, but I like to do this. I don't know why. It just saves a little bit of space. Maybe you don't want to do it, but that's my idea. And even on the short instrument name, set it all up now. While you're on this menu, you might as well use it. So let's go over here and backspace, and so I don't have to put that flat symbol in every time, I just copy and paste the one that's right there. So B flat trumpet, and I click apply, and there we have it. So B flat trumpet. And if I wanted to add multiple as well, I can open it back up, and I could go 1 and 2 if I wanted to do this. And I could do it the same over here, 1 and 2. So click apply again. And so now I have B flat trumpet 1 and 2. So any of those little adjustments, if I wanted to do the same thing here with B flat clarinet, instead of clarinet in B flat, we could just So there we have it. So any little additions that you need to make like that to the instrument names. And now I'm going to jump over to a score I've already worked on because I think it's going to be a little easier to illustrate some of the points that I'm going to make here. So we're going to abandon MuseScore Video, the song. We're done with him. We're going over to this one. This is Struttin' for orchestra, and you could tell right away that I have much bolder fonts, much larger fonts. You might not even like the way this score looks. It's a little bit of a different one. I was going for a different aesthetic on this, but you'll notice that my instrument names are all set differently. And over here, I have a big box to where my lyricist would usually be, my name. Instead of just my name, I have music by. So let's jump into our menus and see how I got all this score layout like this. And now I'm going to show you probably the most useful window in all of MuseScore for affecting the way your score looks. So if you need to change anything about the looks or the text, you're going to click on Format up here, and you're going to go down to Style. It's going to open this new window for you. And you see I am using a different musical font here. It sort of has the handwritten look to it that I wanted for a jazz score. And if you click on musical symbol font here, you're able to change it to a bunch of wonderful different options. They even have some of the finale options in here as well. I believe that's what those are. But you could try out Muse Jazz. It has a lot of good handwritten stuff as well. The default is Leland, and these other ones here I think are just sort of the standard typeset for music. So feel free to adjust those. Find which one you like the look of the most. I suggest maybe not using the one I have here, but using one that looks as clear as possible. And I would probably say that's going to be one of these top ones, likely Leland, but I'll leave that up to you. They're all pretty good. And now staff line thickness. That's an important one for me too. It's usually set much lower than this, but since I use these scores for YouTube videos, I like the lines to be as bold as possible so you can really tell if it's on a line or a space. And so I set mine to 27. And so you see a lot of other options here. If I click on Hide Empty Staves Within System, let's click on that. So you see it just got rid of something here. So as I click on it again, see, I got back my tenor saxophone. I got back my flutes. So when I click on that, it will just take any instrument away that is not being used for that page or that system. So he's very useful if you're wanting to condense your scores down a little bit. And as you see, this score is pretty active, so I don't have him clicked because so many people are playing all over the place. Now, under that, you have page. And now here, I have most of this set to the defaults, but you could change the margins of your music. You could change the distance of, if you have a lot of systems on one page, you could adjust the amount of space between them. All sorts of wonderful stuff there. So once you've picked your musical font, and once you've adjusted your line thickness, and if you need to hide those staves, you're going to come down to text styles. And now text styles is where everything to do with the text is going to exist. Its size, if something's bold, if it's going to be aligned center, left, or right, all of that's going to be found here. Here we have our title, our subtitle, composer, lyricist, and all of this, as you can see, I've changed. I used Rockwell for this for whatever reason. I wanted it to look really bold, I guess. So as you go through, you see I've changed the size. I've aligned things differently in some cases. If I go to my instrument name, so here's what we were working on earlier, instrument name long. And then once you have set that, instrument name short, of course, has to do with all of these over here. So all of the shortened versions of this on the second page and on. So instrument change, I haven't touched because I don't have any in here. So the header and the footer, this gets a little complicated because the header is actually your page number. So that's one of my big tricks to you here, that if you're trying to change that page number and you don't know how to do it, you can adjust that right here. And you could even adjust, if you look where I'm I'm clicking here, the offset. You can even change if you want it to move a little bit, be a little higher up the page. If you want there to be some more separation between the page number and the very first system, you can adjust some of that here as well. So here you have your measure numbers as well. So if you want to change anything about the style, you see I have these big bold circles around the number. If you don't want that, you don't have to do that, of course, but that will be right here. So you click on the text you want, you go to frame, and then I have mine in a circle. You can put it in a box as well, or you can have none. So you see it got rid of it. So now it just has that number 6, but I enjoyed the way that bold circle looked around it. Now this goes for everything. Our tempo markings here, system text. This is another thing. I would come through and set your system, staff, expression, hairpin. Just find whatever the font style you're going for is. Sometimes you might like Century School Book. Some people like just standard Times New Roman. It really doesn't matter what font you use. You just need to use the one that you like the most, the one that you think makes your score look the best. I'm not going to tell you which one to use. One of my biggest pieces of advice is for you to have a score that you can look to help you out along the way. So if you are going to do a huge orchestral score, go find a score to one of your favorite symphonies and see how they lay everything out. It could be anything from any time period, just so long as you think it is a really good engraving and that all the information is very clear. And so look to that music, look to examples of existing music, and try your best to mimic what you see on the page there. You can even find, if you want to try to match a font of an old text or something like that, you can even find online, you could upload images to certain websites of text, and it will identify the possible options of what that font is. And I found that very helpful. And while I'm on that point, I'll take you over to my other score here where I actually used that. And that is one of my recent commissions I did here. And so I wanted the text on top to look sort of like, so I wanted all this text to look sort of like Roger Quilter. If you're familiar with the composer Roger Quilter, I really enjoy the old style of engraving that I see on his notation. And so I wanted to sort of mimic that as best as I could here. And you see it's a very busy score with a lot of invisible markings and things. Now that's pretty much everything I have to tell you about this style window, other than go exploring. So you see here page, you can adjust the space between systems if you have multiple systems to a page. And here we have sizes of things. Some of these menus, you click on them thinking there's going to be more important information, and there really isn't. So just mind that as you go through. Some of these are going to be ones you never go to. So here for header and footer, if you wanted to add anything specific. So here they have this $sign and a P, which will just list the page number. And you see that they even have it where it goes from the right page on odd numbers and it goes to the left page. That is just so that page number jumps back and forth from one side of the page to the other as you flip. But if you're somebody who just wants that page, maybe that page number down in the center, you would just copy this and you can come down to footer and you could hit paste here and you can hit paste here. And so now on odd and even pages, when you go through, you could have that page number right there on the bottom because I know some people prefer that. So here we have measure numbers, and this is basically for how frequently you want the measure numbers to appear. You could also add measure numbers from a different menu to any measure you want. So even if there's one measure where you want a rehearsal marking or a specific measure number to pop up, you can make sure you add that. System, like I said, a lot of things here that you're not going to go click on a lot. But one of my main things I'll tell you to do is come through all of this and adjust the thickness of everything. So let's see if we could find that. There should be something here that says, there it is, double bar line thickness, thin bar line thickness. So you could come through and adjust the thickness of your measures, your bar lines, all of that. And I'd say they're almost always a little smaller than I'd prefer them to be. So if you boost them up just a little bit, I don't think there's going to be too much harm in that, so long as it doesn't just make a big blob of ink on your page, you should be good. But the same stuff appears here under slurs and ties. So dotted line thickness, all of this. So you can adjust all of the lines and their thickness in this basically. And that's very helpful for just making everything appear as bold as it can. So when the instrumentalist is reading through, they're not having to squint so much. The conductor's not having to squint. So I highly suggest you come through and look at the sizing of everything. That's going to be one of the most important things. Now that we're done with styles, page settings over here is another very, very helpful one. Like I said, this is a score I initially made for a YouTube video, so I wasn't really too concerned about printing this off or having to send this music to anybody. I customized the width and the height of my piece, but if you wanted, you could just keep it as legal or letter or executive or any of these generic dimensions that you could possibly use. It by default will set it for letter, but you could change it to legal or any of these other formats, whatever it is you're writing and whatever the requirement is. That even if you're doing professional work, whatever the requirement is, they might say that they want it to have a certain page size, and then you can come here and adjust that. The other thing I wanted to point out is this staff space, and this is the scaling of every single thing. So if you want the entire score to get smaller, the entire thing to get bigger, but just realize if you make this smaller, it might push your measures together. It might put two systems onto one page. So these are just things to keep in mind. The more you mess with this staff space after you've completed your score, I would say the more it's going to mess up your score. So this is a very nice place to get that done early on, to make sure you have your spacing all right throughout your whole piece. And you see over here, you have your margins, and you could change them by even page number, odd page number, what the margin is at the top, bottom, left, and right. So all of that information right there, super helpful. With all of that being said, let's get over to one of the other very helpful menus that we're going to need before we make any adjustments to our score here. And that is going to be to click on View, and then you come down to Master Palette. I enjoy Master Palette. You have to drag it around the screen, and that might be painful to some people, but it has everything right there. There's nothing that's excluded from this, and so I have a full palette to work with at all time. Your clef, your time signature, key signature, if you want any other brackets at the start of your measure. Let's say I wanted to have, for some reason, the trombones and bass trombone. I could come over here, click on him, and now you see I selected one, shift, selected the other, so now I've selected both those lines together, and then I've added this little bracket there. And if I wanted to, I could do that, pair anything up in any way I want. So that's how you do that. You could add all of your different accidentals here. You have all your articulations, ornaments, breaths and pauses, grace notes, note heads, all of this stuff, wonderful stuff. Dynamics is one of the major ones you're going to use. Tempo you're going to use, and text you're going to use a bunch. All kinds of layout tools here. I suggest you look through this. So we have a system break, we have page breaks, all sorts of wonderful stuff here. If you need to put a little bit of space between two things, let's say my trombones are getting a little too close to my bass trombones, I put them in there, and now look at that. As simple as that, I can drag and change the space and the size here. So this is going to be a very helpful menu to you. Always have this guy open. Now with that, I wanted to show you inside my score some of the tricks that I put in to get the playback sounding better. There are going to be some elements of your score where you're going to want it to look as clear as possible, but you're also going to want to add a few things if you want your playback to sound right. You're going to add in a few extra elements that you're going to make invisible, and those invisible elements can get the playback to sound just a little more organic. If you want crescendos, decrescendos, dynamic markings, maybe an instrument like a brass instrument, they're getting that wrong timbre. You want it to have a brassier sound, but unless you mark it mezzo forte or higher, that brassy sound is a little muted. So what you might need to do is put a forte in, just like I have here at the start. You'll see if I drag this over, we have a little forte hanging out right there. And so what I've done is I first got my master palette. Let's start this over. Pretend I never marked any of this in here. I'm going to delete both of them. Now the first thing you're going to put is the dynamic you want to appear. So I clicked on my note and I put in mezzo forte. That's who I want to appear. But I want him to sound as a forte because I want that brassy bite to it. So I'm going to click on the note again. I'm going to click on my forte. Now I'm going to go click on that forte, make sure I have him selected. There we go. And I'm going to click V, or I'm going to press V. I'm not going to click it. I guess it kind of clicked, didn't it? But, and once I have him selected, I'm going to press V on my keyboard. And now you see it's made him grayed out. So if I put this guy back over the top, if I take the PDF of this score, I will not see that grayed out thing at all. He will not appear on my PDF. And you see some instruments, especially the instruments that are Muse Basic, not the Muse Sounds package that you can get, but the Muse Basic. Sometimes you find some odd dynamic things with them as well. They're just too loud all the time. And so you have to make a lot of adjustments. And so here you see I have mezzo piano hiding underneath my mezzo forte. So it's just going to depend on the instrument and the context, okay? The instrument and the context is key. So you see I have a bunch of invisible dynamics here. Now let's listen a little bit to what that sounds like and you'll see my point. So here I'll select this. So let's hear how that sounds. There's been a recent update to MuseScore too that's adjusted a little bit of those sounds. So you see there, it's balanced as nicely as it can be right now. It's been a while since I've worked on this score, so I may have left it in bad order. But you see the point I'm trying to make here is that I have a visual part to my score, how I want the PDF to look, and then I'm constantly going in and adding. So let's go hunt down some more. Here's another one. So I have him starting mezzo piano and getting louder to mezzo forte. If you just put a crescendo, it's going to take the dynamic you're at and it's going to bring you up to the next one. If you're at mezzo piano, I think it just takes you right up to mezzo forte. If you're at piano, it's going to take you to mezzo piano. So here, I suppose I had a mezzo forte already marked right here for, these are my cellos, by the way, in the middle of my score. So you see I have him marked to mezzo forte. I scroll over to here, and then I wanted him to have a bit of a crescendo coming back into that. And I didn't see the need to write a decrescendo on the phrase that came before. So little tricks like this, making dynamics invisible, making the tempo marking invisible on the top. Let's see if I have any of that. I assume I've done that somewhere in here. Well, what do you know? Oh, there it is. So here at the end, I wanted it to sound completely free, completely at the discretion of a conductor. So you see I've put in invisible dynamics because the flute up in its high range was way too jarring. And then over here we have invisible dynamic. You just have to take everything on a case-by-case basis, take everything one measure at a time and one instrument at a time. And that's going to be one of the last little playthrough things I want to show you here, is that MuseScore gives you the opportunity to focus on just one section at a time. So if I wanted to just listen to, let's take this section right here, and I only want to hear my woodwinds. I only want to hear flutes, alto sax, tenor sax, and my bass clarinet. So I'm going to click on the flutes, I'm going to shift and click down to bass clarinet, and you see it's selected all that. So now when I press the space bar or press play, this is what you'll hear. So you see there, it actually did the retardando I've put in there. So now you see right there, it only played my woodwind section, and I could do this with any section. I could pair a few extra instruments, maybe take my woodwinds all the way down to, let's say, like my trumpets. I could do anything like that that I wanted. And now over here, you may have noticed as well, it played this retardando. It actually slowed down a good deal. So I click on that retardando. I'm going to go click over here on this tab. It's called Properties. And if you don't have it open, you click on View and come down to Properties here. It's also F8 if you want to use the shortcut. But I have it open almost all the time. And whatever you click on, you're now going to be able to adjust some elements of it over here, whether it's the style, the position, or the way the text looks. So the main thing I want to do is click on playback. And what do you see here? Tempo change amount. So what percentage do you want this tempo to be changing? And as you mess with that, making it larger or smaller and listen back, you're going to find exactly the kind of retardando or accelerando or whatever you want. You're going to get it balanced just right. It's going to have that sort of live sound, like I keep saying, that organic sound to it. Now here we also have these fermatas, you know what I'm talking about. So I'll click on it. I click playback again, time stretch. Now, what percentage do you want this to stretch the time out? So I wanted him to linger on this for a little bit. Oh, here's another one here, glissando. So I'll click on playback for that. So it says, what style do you want it to be? A chromatic one, the white keys, black keys, diatonic, or portamento. And the portamento works with some instrument sounds, but not all instrument sounds. So be careful of that as you're going through. You might put in a portamento and it just won't play it for you. So that's the majority of the little audio tricks. I've showed you the visual. You go to Format. We look at styles, page settings. We've looked at that. And what I've done here is just try to show you the invisible details that you can add to these scores to get even more out of them, to get a little bit more realistic playback. Like here's another example. The flute in its upper range, it's just too screechy for me. So I made this little lick that comes down pianissimo, and then I switch it to mezzo piano. I probably could have put a crescendo in between that as well, but I didn't do that when I was working on this last. So anyway, little details like that I just wanted to throw out there so you can see. Now this is one of the last things I wanted to share with you from within MuseScore, and that is this mixer tab right at the very top of the page. So I'm going to click on mixer. Now, there's a lot of stuff going on here. Some people pointed out in one of my previous videos that I have all of my dynamics, all of my levels pulled pretty low. And I do have them pulled pretty low, and I could probably do with pulling them up a little bit further. But like I said, there are some elements, let's say the flute in its upper range, like this electric guitar here, that's a Muse basic sound. By default, it might not pick the right things. So you're going to make sure you have Muse sounds, and it'll be right here, Muse sounds, and you could pick by section. And if you want to try out different flute sound effects, some of them they only have one, but some of them they'll have multiple. For example, I've said before, here we have horns, A6, but we also have horn in F. And so that's the difference between multiple horns sounding and one horn sounding, or trombone versus trombone A3, trumpet A3. So do you want the multiple instruments playing at once, or do you want it to sound like a soloist playing one singular instrument? So keep all of that in mind and find which sound effect you might like a little bit more. You could add all kinds of wonderful stuff here, but I'm going to stick to the basics. The main one is you can pick the level, how loud or how soft each instrument is going to be. And let's even get it playing so we see what's going on here. I can tell my computer isn't too happy about the screen recording going on while I'm doing this, but we're going to keep going anyway. Now, this is how you do this. You open up the mixer, you start playing through the music that you've got set just how you want it, and now you start working with the mixer and pulling up if you need a little bit more woodwind, or if you need a little bit more trumpet, or if you need a little more percussion. Whatever it is, you can work on it here. And you see this knob right here under reverb, not next to reverb, but under it. This is our panning angle. And so we can pull instruments a little bit more to our left ear, a little bit more to our right ear, whatever floats your boat. And some people like to simulate the positioning of a real orchestra or a real jazz band, saying, oh, I have my violins right here. I might want my tuba trombone to be coming out of my right ear. however it is that you prefer this. But my only thing is not to pull things too far off center to where it's too heavy in one ear or too heavy in the other ear. I would say that's the only big concern there. And some of these instruments you'll even notice, even if you have them set to 0 right in the center, depending on where they are in their range, I find that sometimes it sounds like it's coming out of one ear more than the other. And I assume that's just how they recorded the audio when they got a clarinet player to sit down and play all the notes they needed. I assume that's how they got some of these sound fonts. And so just some of the natural recording sound of that room, some of the natural qualities of how it was recorded might sneak into yours a little bit, but there's really not too much harm in that. But this is where you select all your instrument sound effects. This is where you select the reverb on instruments if you want to add a little bit more reverb. All of that can be done right here. So now, once you're all finished up, your score is complete, you have all your invisible dynamics, it looks the way you want, all of that, you are ready to export. And so you're going to come up to File, and you're going to go down to Naturally Export. Not naturally export, you know what I mean. Now it's going to open this window, and the format here is likely going to be set to PDF by default, but once you open it, you see there are all kinds of wonderful other options. Some of them are audio and some of them are visual, and you even have your MIDI file here. But I'm trying to take the audio out of this, and I want it to be as high quality as it can be. And so I see a lot of people recommend using WAV audio files just because I think they're larger files than just standard MP3s by and large. So click WAV audio, and then your sample rate, make sure it's to the highest it can be. And then I'm going to click Export. Now I've already exported this before I started recording, so I'm going to show you what that's going to look like now. So once you get out of this, if you have Audacity, this program right here, you can get this for free online as well. And this is an extremely helpful tool for recording audio or just touching audio up, anything like that you need. So get Audacity, and once you've exported your audio, and once you've taken your audio out of MuseScore, you can just pull it right into Audacity here and do a little bit of touching up. So you see I have strutting, unedited audio. So I've pulled that piece we were just looking at. And the first thing I want to do is I want to get it a little louder, because I always, in MuseScore, I try to keep the sounds just a little bit lower. And so I'm going to click Amplify, and it's going to bring this menu up, and it's going to automatically choose the largest amplification it can before it starts getting all distorted. So let's apply. And now the very last thing I want to show you here is the compressor. So click on Compressor, and I'll click Apply. And you see, it's just bulked everything up a bit. Now, one of the reasons I've started to compress all my audio like this, which I used to not do at all, is just because I find when I'm listening to it across all different platforms, so whether I'm listening on a TV, or if I'm listening on my phone, or if I'm listening with good headphones at my computer, the audio is going to be really clear. And once I've compressed the audio, I can tell that no matter what platform I'm listening on, it just has a little bit more life to it. So even if it's a quiet part where just violins are playing really quietly, when I compress that audio, I find that if somebody's listening to that on their phone, they don't have to constantly rock the volume up and down and up and down. So that's the use of the compressor. So now I have, let's see where we started with this. So that's where we started. There's still a lot of extra sound that we can get out of this, you can tell. And now if I go back, so you see there, that is about all I have for this video. I've been sitting here rambling for a while, trying desperately to remember all the little points that I have between MuseScore, between Audacity, all of the different text options. I've tried to pack as much useful info into this video as I possibly can. If there's some things I've left out, please feel free to include them in the comments section. I'm sure somebody will stumble upon it and find it very useful. Thank you so much for watching this video, and happy composing.